Good morning, I'm Clint Walker, and this is Real Estate Appraiser Secrets. And today we're going to answer the question, do niche improvements like storm shelters, generators, and Tesla chargers add value? So I think that I have made a video similar to this before on other types of site improvements. So if you haven't seen that one, definitely look back through the library of videos, which I think goes back like almost a year or maybe over a year now. And check that one out too, because I probably won't necessarily say the same thing twice. But the issue of ever asking if these extra things add value sort of always starts with the idea or the implication that you can find two properties that are exactly the same. And if you've been doing this for any time at all, you know that that is a virtual impossibility. Real estate is often as different and varied as human beings themselves. So it's very difficult to ever compare two properties that are exactly the same. I can think of scenarios where it can happen. I can think of, types of properties where you're going to get closer to two properties that are exactly the same. But really, as soon as the person starts living there, and the owner of the property starts, affecting the condition of the improvements one way or the other through maintenance or the lack thereof, you start to get properties that simply don't line up. So whenever I get asked about anything adding value to the property, that's immediately where my mind goes, because let's say I'm trying to figure out the value of a Tesla charger. The way that an appraiser finds out the value of anything, well, the best way that we find out the value of anything is to take a handful of properties, or at a minimum, two properties. One that doesn't have the thing and one that does have the Tesla charger. And we look to see if the one that had the Tesla charger sold for more. We look to see if the one that had the storm shelter sold for more, or the generator. And if it does, and we can, with a reasonable degree of certainty, attribute that premium to that additional item, then we could say to you or anyone else that we're actually doing the appraisal for, yeah, here's how much the Tesla charger or the generator or the storm shelter is worth, because we can extract it straight from comparing the two sales together. The problem is, or the challenge becomes, again, when you try to compare two sales to get one line item value for a thing like that, you quickly start to see, well, this property, yeah, it doesn't have the Tesla charger, but it does have an extra half bath, or it doesn't have the Tesla charger, but it does have the storm shelter, and this one has one but not the other two. You quickly start to get lots of differences that you have to wonder if they are influencing the value. And so answering the question of whether any one item does add value to a property quickly becomes nearly impossible. Now, there are other ways that your appraiser can go out and determine the value. We could look at the cost of putting in a storm shelter. Let's say that's $10,000. So a house that has no storm shelter, we know that a storm shelter costs about $10,000. So we could start from somewhere like that cost value. And then say you put your storm shelter in 5 years ago, it is theoretically possible to figure out an amount of depreciation for 5 years of age on that storm shelter. These things are not easy to figure out, but they're possible sometimes. And so what we could do is combine those two, the cost new, and then apply the depreciation. And we could apply what's called a depreciated cost to that item to figure out how much value it contributes to the property. Now, that is a way that's acceptable in our industry, but that's not necessarily as good as saying this is what a buyer will pay for that. In most lender work, and I think most appraisers would prefer to be able to extract what a buyer is going to pay. Because at the end of the day, me or you or any of our sellers can take all the money that we spend on the property and tack it on to the asking price of a similar property that doesn't have that stuff and say, I want all the money back out of this because this is how much I spent. And in theory, that's fair, because if a buyer also wanted those things, the buyer would have to spend that money as well, plus some of their time and energy. The problem with that is there's no guarantee that a buyer does want any of that stuff unless you can find where a buyer's already paid for it, okay? So that's why with every single thing that we give value to, our highest priority, our most authoritative source of value would be pairing two sales together. We call it paired sales analysis. I try not to use these appraiser terms in my videos because jargon's not super helpful, but a lot of our jargon is kind of literal. We call it paired sales analysis because we literally take a pair of sales, analyze them, and if we try to attribute the difference in those prices to a feature on the property if we can, or narrow it down to one particular feature. And we like paired sales analysis the best because we're using closed sales and what buyers have actually opened their wallets and paid for to figure out the value of anything. We can also use, as I said, depreciated replacement cost to estimate contributory value. That one is totally fair. You'll see it a lot in any appraisal report. I use it a lot because really you're combining a lot of sales together and you're trying to narrow them down by their differences, and that's just a useful tool to do that. And then you look at the sales and you see, well, I'm using depreciated replacement cost. Does it make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, then you don't do it. And the other way, there's lots of ways, but another good way that we can handle these things, and this is what I really recommend to a lot of agents, is we can use an approach to comparison that is qualitative, okay? We take all of the individual value we take the individual value question and set it aside, okay? So we're not going to say, okay, I'm putting $5,000 on the Tesla charger. What we're saying is, I've got 4 sales. They range in price from $400,000 to $450,000. The basic ones that don't have a lot of any bells and whistles are down here around the $400,000 range. I've got a few that do have some bells and whistles, and they're up around the $450,000 range. Maybe none of those bells and whistles are Tesla chargers, storm shelters, and generators, but they are extras, okay? And so what we're seeing in our range of values from 400 to 450 is a qualitative difference where more basic properties sell for less, properties that feature some extra things sell for more, and we can say, well, our Tesla charger or our storm shelter or generator is definitely something extra. And so qualitatively, we're going to put it in the higher end of our value range. That is often my favorite way to do things, especially when I'm trying to help agents, because I guess working as an agent for so many years, I know that buyers often don't go in and put dollars and cents on these extra features. They often look at these things from a qualitative basis. I like this property better, therefore that's the one I'm going to choose. And or I like this property better, and so yeah, I'll be willing to pay their asking price for those things, right? It's a qualitative analysis on the buyer side, and as appraisers, we really want to get in the minds of the buyers. So I think a qualitative approach to these little extra things is really fair and maybe the most realistic approach to doing it a lot of the times. So as an agent, I encourage you, when you have one of these properties, think about the property on its most basic level without those things first, Okay, start to look at your comps that don't have anything and think about them, and then look at some other ones that maybe have a few extra things if you can't find an exact match for what you got. And look at the prices of the closed sales, not necessarily just the price per square foot, but the price of the actual sales prices, and slot yours in there based on how good it is, based on your qualitative analysis of that. So I hope that's helpful. A lot of times when you get into these properties that have a lot of bells and whistles, really the most helpful thing would be to get an appraisal on it, a pre-listing appraisal. If we can help you with that, we would be honored to. You can find us at truepointappraisals.com, which is our new website and the new company or the new name of the company, I guess. We're making some changes to appraiserpool.com, so that'll come back at a later date as a different thing than it is right now. But find us at truepointappraisals.com. You can still go to appraiserpool.com and it'll send you there. But as always, I thank you for watching the videos, and we will catch you next time.